Welcome to the deep dive. We've got some really fascinating material you sent over focusing on Neville Goddard.
Yes, specifically that lecture from February 68, Power Sent Me.
Exactly. And our mission today, I suppose, is to really get to the heart of it.
Mm.
His claim about being sent by God and what this power actually is.
We're looking at excerpts directly from his work, so straight from the source.
Good. So where do we start? That opening claim is pretty potent.
It really is. He just puts it out there. I've been saying through the years that God has sent me.
And he adds that bit. One day you will know it. It's like a promise, almost.
A future certainty. It sets the stage for this idea of direct personal experience being key.
Absolutely. Okay, let's dig a bit deeper there. He brings in Browning, right? About truth being within us.
Yes, that quote about imprisoned splendor escaping rather than letting external light in.
That really frames his whole approach, doesn't it? He's not trying to convince you of something new, but awaken something already there.
Precisely. If his message clicks, it's because it resonates with that inner knowing as he sees it.
And then he makes that comparison to Jesus in John 17. Quite a bold move.
It is, saying basically, just like Jesus gave the words God gave him and they believed God sent him, I'm doing the same.
That's direct. How does he justify that kind of parallel? Doesn't it risk sounding arrogant?
Well, for Goddard, it seems to stem directly from this really profound personal experience he claims to have had. It wasn't just an idea.
Right. This is where it gets really, really interesting. Can
Yeah.
you walk us through that? The experience with the risen Lord.
Okay, so he describes standing in the presence of the risen Lord, who he perceived in human form, but embodying infinite love.
Just pure love.
That's how he felt it. And then being embraced, literally incorporated into this being, becoming, as he quotes, one spirit, one Lord, one God, and Father of all.
Wow. That's incredibly intense language. Visionary.
It absolutely is a mystical union. And then immediately after that, he describes standing in the presence of almightiness, pure power. And that power is what dispatches him.
With the words, time to act.
Just those three words, simple, direct.
But the order here feels crucial, doesn't it? He stresses that the power part came after the love part.
Yes, very much so. He explicitly says that power without that grounding in love would be, well, horrific, the most horrible thing in the world, I think he says.
So love is like the prerequisite, the safeguard.
That seems to be the core insight. You need that foundation of love before you can wield this kind of power responsibly.
Okay, so what is this power then? The one he was sent to reveal.
He's very clear. He says it's our own wonderful human imagination.
Right. Not some external force, but something inside us.
Exactly. This is like the central pillar of his whole teaching, elevating imagination to a divine faculty, the creative power of God within us.
He's essentially saying the almightiness he encountered is the same potential we all have.
And he contrasts it so sharply with, the kind of power humanity seems obsessed with.
Like nuclear weapons. He sort of laments that focus, doesn't he?
He does, seeing it as focusing on destructive firecrackers when we have this incredible constructive force inside us that we barely use.
It's a totally different view of power. Not external force, but internal shaping.
Shaping reality from the inside out. That's the idea.
And that analogy he uses, Grand Central Station or the stock market.
Yeah, imagine the pandemonium. He says you could freeze it all just by an interaction, arresting the activity within yourself.
But then the next step is even more, well, mind-bending.
Changing the intentions of everyone there,
Right.
before releasing the inner stillness.
So they act differently, but think it's their own idea.
Exactly. It illustrates this subtle yet profound influence. Not manipulation in the crude sense, but shifting the underlying impulse.
And he insists that those truly sent, grounded in love, wouldn't use this power destructively, even though they could.
Right, that army turning on itself example is pretty stark. But the Love Foundation acts as that ethical safeguard.
It ensures the power is used for creation, for life.
Towards betterment, yeah. Not harm.
He brings in John 5.26 too, about the Father having life in himself and granting it to the Son.
Connecting it back to that inherent life, that divine spark within us all. It's not granted externally, it's part of our being.
Okay, so how does one tap into this? How does the calling happen? He quotes, "No man cometh unto me, save my Father calls him."
He interprets that as a deep inner thing, starting beneath the surface, an awakening stirring within.
Not necessarily an external voice, but an internal realization unfolding.
Right. And then there's that famous line, many are called, but few are chosen.
How does he explain that?
He says true belief isn't just saying the words, it's a deep conviction recognized in the soul. Your whole being has to align with it.
It's about genuine transformation, not just intellectual agreement.
Exactly. And he's clear he wasn't sent to judge or condemn, echoing John 3:17.
Only to bring life. Makes sense if the power is creative.
It reframes his mission as empowerment, offering a path to a fuller reality through using your imagination consciously.
And then he links the name of the Son to nature.
Yeah.
And identifies that nature as power, citing 1 Corinthians.
Jesus Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God? Yes.
So being sent by God's power is, for him, being sent by Jesus Christ.
Right. And this power, this talent, is expected to be used, invested, returned with increase.
It makes Christ less a historical figure and more this active divine power within us.
That's a great way to put it. It's about engaging with and developing that inner potential.
Okay, let's get to the dream. The lady's two-part dream. It really illustrates all this, doesn't it?
It really does. So, first part, remote place, glass room, expecting someone.
And this figure arrives in a self-propelled carriage, embodying power.
Wearing an Inverness cape, carrying an attaché bag, and she recognizes him as both Neville and God.
But he only talks about power. No personal interaction at all.
None. Just this raw, impersonal force. Then he leaves, the carriage vanishes. She wakes up knowing she has to tell Neville.
That cape detail is interesting. You mentioned it comes back later.
Yes, he mentions everyone in the divine assembly wore them in his own experience. A curious detail.
Okay, then she dreams it again. The second dream.
Right, but this time she knows she needs to remember it. She's trying to get to Neville.
Finds herself at a ticket office, meets Marge Broom, finds a topaz.
Yes, a polished topaz with gold in it. Someone says it's valuable. She puts it in her purse.
But then things disappear. Marge, the car, the topaz, is gone from her purse.
Exactly. She has no money, no way to get to Neville physically. She's stuck.
And that's the moment. The test.
Precisely. What does she do? She decides to go within. She imagines being with Neville.
And instantly.
She's there, in his home, starting to tell him the dream.
But gets interrupted by joyful people arriving. She can't quite explain how she got there using imagination.
Right. The interruption kind of highlights how seamless it can be. The inner act leads directly to the outer reality.
So Neville's interpretation
is that this shows exactly how someone is chosen or called by applying the principle, using imagination in the face of limitation.
Passing the test, essentially.
And the dream being doubled. He says that signifies certainty, divine origin, like in Genesis with Pharaoh's dream.
It means it's important and it's going to happen.
That's the idea. Her act of imagining was the key.
And then he stresses, this isn't just about him. He's not unique.
No, he's very clear. Everyone eventually will have this calling, this incorporation into love, this dispatch by power. It's universal.
It's the human destiny, in his view.
Seems so. He also clarifies why his focus was so much on power at that time.
Because God was wearing the garment of power, which he identifies as Christ.
Exactly. So his message was tailored to that specific divine aspect or manifestation.
And his definition of the greatest power.
Simply affecting the fulfillment of desire through imagination. Everything else, wealth, armies, nuclear bombs, just firecrackers by comparison.
That's quite a statement. True power is inner creation.
And the lady instantly being in his home is the perfect demonstration. No physical means, just the imaginal act.
It really drives the point home.
It does. And then he warns against making Jesus Christ an external fetish or icon.
Because the true Christ is
the power within us, our imagination. Seeing the external figure is seeing the power that sent him that inner potential.
He keeps bringing it back inside. It's consistently about internal power, internal divinity.
Always. It's about realizing what's already resident within you.
Like an architect imagining the building first. Imagination is the blueprint and the builder.
That's a good analogy. Okay, then there's the second dream he shares.
Right, the one about symbolism and revision, the dormitory.
Yes. Other girls believe fate is fixed by a chart. But the dreamer argues against it. She has her own room, her own space.
And she insists you can revise the day through imagination. Change the outcome.
Exactly. It introduces that powerful concept of revision, changing not just the future, but the meaning and impact of the past.
Challenging determinism head on.
Absolutely. Then she leaves, travels, comes back.
And finds someone else in her place, playing her part with different books.
Her encyclopedias are gone, put under the bed, and she forcefully demands them back.
Which Neville interprets as
reclaiming her own knowledge, her own power, her inner authority, rejecting the imposed belief system.
Taking back control of her own understanding.
Right. Then the scene shifts dramatically. Anticipation of the grandmother arriving.
And she shares this really touching memory of her love for her grandmother.
Establishes that deep connection. Then the grandmother appears, but she died years before, in 62.
And she looks younger, vibrant.
Full of life. They embrace, kiss, and then suddenly she becomes rigid, dies, vanishes.
Whoa! That's intense.
Very. But while others are sad, the dreamer feels joy.
Joy. Why?
Because she recognizes the symbolism. The grandmother represents an eternal part of her, yes, but her vanishing signifies a transcendence, a realization of the dreamer's own true nature, beyond that relationship, beyond the old forms.
Letting go of old paradigms.
Exactly. Neville interprets it as her awakening to the symbolic nature of reality and her power to revise it. The vital but vanishing grandmother signals the passing of the old way and the birth of a new, powerful reality she controls.
It's like shedding an old skin, almost.
Kind of. Realizing the external is a reflection, and revision changes the reflection. Like replaying that awkward conversation in your mind the way you wished it went, and feeling the shift now.
Got it. So he loops back to the main message again. He was sent to reveal this inner power independent of circumstances.
And quotes John 6.29 again. Believe in him whom he has sent.
But stresses again, believe the message, not the man.
Right. Believe in the power of imagination, which he equates with Christ. Divorce the messenger from the message.
That's a constant refrain.
Yeah.
Place faith in the principle described.
Yes. He even brings up the historical criticism of Jesus hanging out with sinners and tax collectors.
To show that the divine calling isn't based on worldly status or appearances.
Exactly. Jesus kept pointing to him who sent me, his divine origin, not his earthly one. The calling is deeper, supernatural.
It transcends those surface judgments.
Then he revisits the first dream again, the lady's dream.
Highlighting how she met the test.
Yes, by immediately using her imagination when her physical means disappeared. That act of applying the teaching was the calling.
That's what made her a true follower in his eyes. And the doubling of the dream reinforces its certainty.
Its importance and inevitability. Definitely.
He quotes John 16.282. I came from the Father, now I am returning to the Father.
Suggesting that's the journey for all of us. Emanation and return. A cosmic pattern.
So his ultimate goal, the work given to him,
was to form this nucleus, this core group who really get it, who believe in their own imagination as God.
to share that story. God became man so man might become God. And that God is imagination.
That's the glorious story, as he calls it.
The imprisonment analogy really drives home the power of that belief, too.
Right. Just imagining yourself free, truly believing it transcends physical bars. It contrasts sharply with relying on external authorities.
Like the warning in Samuel about wanting an external king or God.
Exactly. True freedom, true power comes from within. Relying only on the external is a kind of self-imposed prison.
And he points out Jesus didn't use his power to escape suffering.
Citing Matthew, yes. To fulfill Scripture, return to the Father in joy, rejoin that body of love.
So power isn't always about avoiding difficulty, but fulfilling a deeper purpose.
Precisely. It's a different understanding of strength.
Okay, and those brief Q&A bits at the end, they add some interesting nuances.
They do. Affirming the listener is the sole judge of their experience. Cherish loving moments, that Kate detail popping up again.
And congratulating Ina for her experience before knowing him, showing it's an inherent potential.
Right. And reiterating the lady's dream fulfilled Scripture about knowing God sent him.
As power, but always after being grounded in love.
Crucially, power without love is terrifying. He also mentions that idea of people being animated versus life-giving spirits.
Suggesting our destiny is to become the latter, able to consciously influence reality.
And that 1946 healing experience he had, attributing it to being one with perfection, not primarily compassion. A different take on miracles.
It all feeds into this constant awareness he claims those saints have.
Driven by time to act and the principle, God only acts and is in existing beings or men, meaning we have to act on our belief.
It really brings it down to personal responsibility and action based on that inner knowing.
Absolutely. It's a deeply personal, transformative path he's outlining.
Okay, so to wrap this deep dive up, we looked at Neville Goddard's Power Symphony. his claim of being sent by God, meaning infinite power,
But crucially, only after being fully incorporated into infinite love.
and identifying that power as our own human imagination, the absolute necessity of love as its foundation.
And that fantastic dream example of the lady applying the principle showing its practical power.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with something to really chew on, doesn't it?
Definitely. How might really understanding, and more importantly, using the power of your own imagination change things for you?
What challenges or tests are you facing right now that maybe, just maybe, could be shifted by consciously directing your inner world?
It's a profound question about the potential lying dormant within us, that wonderful human imagination.
It certainly feels like we've only scratched the surface here. There's so much more to explore. Thanks for joining us on this journey today.